ZUMA-8 is a single-arm phase 2 trial with a little bit of dose finding in the beginning of CAR T cells for patients with chronic lymphocytic leukemia. So patients who are eligible for this trial are patients with CLL who've had at least 2 prior therapies and either been on a BTK inhibitor such as ibrutinib and progressed on it, or are intolerant of that. So patients who enter on this trial will first undergo an apheresis procedure, and their lymphocytes are then shipped to a central facility where the CAR T cell product is manufactured. They're then shipped back to the treating facility where patients undergo lymphodepleting chemotherapy with fludarabine and cyclophosphamide, and then reinfusion of the CAR T cells into the patient, and they're observed for a period of time to make sure that they do not have any toxicity such as cytokine release syndrome or neurotoxicity. And the objective of this trial is overall response. And it's going to be open in a lot of different centers in both US and in Europe, so about 30 centers between those 2 continents. The patients in CLL that are most likely to benefit from CAR T cell therapy are patients that have had a couple prior therapies, are intolerant to ibrutinib or progressing on ibrutinib. In that patient population, our options are getting less and less, and the outcomes for those patients are unfortunately not very good. And so that's where an aggressive treatment regimen such as CAR T cells is most likely to be helpful. I think it may take a while for us to get regulatory approval for CAR T cells in CLL. Some of the trials, such as ZUMA-8, are just getting going right now, and so they have to accrue and ultimately have a period of follow-up before that kind of regulatory submission can be made. Until then, it's probably really not a good idea to use CAR T cells outside of a clinical trial. There, of course, are products that are available commercially for large cell lymphoma, but the way those CAR T cells are made is different than what we're using in ZUMA-8, and so it's probably not a good idea to do it without being part of a clinical trial. The cost of CLL therapy in general is really quite expensive if we think about it. These new oral agents, such as ibrutinib, such as venetoclax, are very expensive, and when they're now given continuously. We're hoping to move towards more duration-limited, time-limited therapies for patients with CLL, but the expense of treating patients is really quite remarkable when you think about it. Now, if you look at the cost of CAR T cells, this is also, if they get approved for chronic lymphocytic leukemia, also going to be very expensive. So we're going to have to carefully examine what we're getting for that, right? So if someone gets a very durable remission, or with CAR T cells that's had 2 or 3 prior lines of therapy, then I think it's probably going to be worth it if you look at it from an economic standpoint. But if it's only the results are only marginal and the patients progress in a short period of time, then I think society is really going to have to examine whether utilizing that kind of expense for a very short benefit is worth it.